Oh my. And welcome to Retrospective Rants with me, Joey Huff, as your host. Today, I'll be ranting about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Actually, I'm only talking about sex. Well, sex in fiction, I mean. Okay. I am ranting about sex in fiction and about how there is a bit of oversaturation in the market right now, but have you considered that totally getting rid of sex in fiction is actually a really stupid, really bad idea? Let me explain first. Yeah. Before I get into the meat of my arguments, I have one general statement. I don't care about the children. That's because children are the responsibility of their parents. If you are worried about children watching or reading things that are not meant for children, then you should monitor them properly. So do not use your failure to parent your children as an excuse to censor what adults might partake in. If you are worried about what kids see, then address those problems by addressing the children, not by legislating morality concerning general entertainment. Thank you. With that undying strawman addressed temporarily, why don't we get to something more serious, such as stating a very obvious fundamental truth. Sex is good. Sex is fun. And it's too overt in modern entertainment and art. But you just said that. I'm not talking about the kids. This is a separate and more important argument, which is sex is an important part of the human experience, and treating it as any other commodity or tool for money grubbing diminishes the importance and, dare I say, makes sex kinda unsexy. But I want to circle back to why you should talk about sex and why its place in storytelling is important, because trying to separate sex from the arts or storytelling is an exercise in folly. This is true even in a supposedly pure and sexless story. For instance, in Lord of the Rings, the books, not the movies, Éowyn is driven towards a near-suicidal run to battle because she feels she'll never love again, because Aragorn does not return her feelings. And so, she feels death on the battlefield is the only way to bring fulfillment to her existence. That's a pretty powerful attraction she had right there. That doesn't have anything to do with sex. It really does. Now, just because we don't get a description of her stripping in front of him, and there's no description of moaning echoing across the mountains, doesn't mean there is no thought of attraction or any thought of sex in Éowyn's mind. It just isn't made explicit the way it is in other stories. But it's very clear that the attractions are there, the feelings are there, and they provoke some very dramatic actions on the part of the character. And that leads to the development of the plot. What about another celebrated character in Lord of the Rings? Sam. Sam marries and has kids. Kids come into the world, right? But there's no description of it in the book. It's a book for adults, and adults know that sex results in kids. There's no need to literally make a scene about it, because the obvious consequences are right there. Therefore, even in a story that isn't about sex, you can't really get rid of sex from the story. What about something more overt? At least slightly. The 1978 Superman movie with Christopher Reeves, for instance. Now, Superman is probably the most wholesome and heroic fictional character in modern fiction, especially when it comes to these United States. And his most famous and well-respected movie is filled with innuendos and sex jokes. Why? Well, 1, sex jokes are funny. 2, he's Superman. Of course women will be salivating over him and fantasizing about him. And that's what happens. Lois Lane accidentally asks how big he is before correcting herself. And Lex Luthor's sidekick plants a big kiss on Superman while he's weakened by kryptonite. But there's no scene where we see them. There doesn't have to be. Adults know what those women and Superman are thinking, and that's that. Even in the second Superman movie, where Lois and Clark do sleep together, we just see them after the act and cuddling in bed. And the audience didn't need any more than that because we knew what happened. Those feelings are natural, too, because Superman is an aspirational figure. Not only as far as capabilities and principles, but also in living one's daily life responsibly and morally. And love and intimacy are pretty big concerns when it comes to daily living. Not having at least some time dedicated to those topics would cheapen the human experience, and would cheapen any artistic medium's ability to convey that experience. Hell, the Bible talks about sex too. A whole lot, in fact. But it talks about rape too. And so do a bunch of psychology textbooks. Because sex, whether it's for pleasure, for love, for ill, or to simply breed, is an important and inescapable part of our nature. People who go celibate don't just give it up, they monitor themselves all the time. They sacrifice an awful lot in order to pursue what they feel is their ultimate calling in life. And that sacrifice only has meaning because it's such a big and hard sacrifice. And it is for those reasons, those same reasons that make the exclusion of sex and love from mature storytelling so ludicrous, that I believe it's overpresent and trivialized in most modern storytelling. It's treated as just another tool in enticing the audience to pay attention, to the point where most people aren't even that affected by it anymore. Not in any significant way, at least. Now, as much as I love Game of Thrones, up to Season 5 at least, it and its parent book series go very, very far in depicting sex and, yes, violence. That last one, violence is a different topic and argument in my opinion, but now sometimes, yes, sex and violence are used to demonstrate or support a story point and prove a wider observation of humanity. Yes, very, very true. But it's mostly done to entice the audience. It's blatant and tasteless, and it's the same way for a lot of other content of the same ilk. Sex is treated as a crutch, a way to get the audience's attention when there's not much else to work with. You even see it when the general media talks about different shows. People will highlight how sexy the actors are or how much chemistry they had in that one scene, as opposed to talking about the writing or the plot. But I think that sort of talk is just a symptom of a bigger problem in our attitude towards sex, as opposed to it being the cause. It's not all about the TV and the video games. No, I would suggest that things like hookup culture and defining one's self-worth by one's number of sexual partners are much bigger problems, and they have affected entertainment and the arts in a largely negative fashion. Regardless, both cause and symptom contribute to the trivialization and unsexing of sex. It's no longer something special or intimate. It's something rather impersonal, transactional, and utilities-based, like toys and food. I feel like I'm going in a circle here. My point is, you can't go all Puritan and keep sex out of all stories. But think of the children. I'm not talking about children's stories. I am talking about general storytelling. I promise you there are more adult stories than there are kid stories, and you're going to hear more stories as an adult than as a kid anyway. So there's that too. Where was I? Oh, yeah, you can go full Epicurean and have everyone screwing everything and everybody on screen or on page, but beyond the moral concerns, it will also just get very boring and samey, and that will reduce the most intimate and personal exchange between men and women to something as fulfilling as filling your car full of gas. That's pretty much what it turns into. That's my rant about sex in media over and done with, though I imagine I might circle back on another episode. Whatever happens, thank you so much for listening, and have a good one.